Mike, every time I think I've heard the craziest scam in history, something new comes along and proves me wrong.
Yeah, man. People think scams started with email princes and fake crypto coins, but nope. There was a guy in the 1920s who literally sold the Eiffel Tower.
And not just once, twice.
Twice. That's not a scammer, that's an artist.
His name was Victor Lustig. Born in Austria-Hungary, spoke 5 languages, dressed like a diplomat, and could charm anyone in the room. He looked like the kind of guy you'd trust with your wallet. And that's exactly why you shouldn't have.
So he wasn't your typical crook in a dark alley. He was the guy in a tailored suit holding the door for you.
Exactly. That's what made him so dangerous. He didn't steal, he convinced you to hand it over.
That's what separates smart con artists from dumb criminals. The dumb ones use a gun. The smart ones use confidence.
That's where the word con even comes from. Confidence man. You trust them before you realize what's happening.
It's wild because back then, we're talking early 1900s Europe, society was obsessed with class and image. If you looked polished, people assumed you were legitimate.
Yeah, the illusion of respectability was his weapon. He was like a magician, but instead of pulling rabbits out of hats, he pulled money out of people's pride.
That's poetic and terrifying at the same time.
Lustig grew up fascinated with rich people, not because he admired them, but because he studied them. He learned how they talked, how they moved, what made them feel important.
So he basically took the concept of fake it till you make it and turned it into a full-time criminal career.
Pretty much. And his genius was in understanding one thing. People are easier to fool when their ego's on the line.
Oh yeah. You flatter someone enough, they'll sell you their house for half price.
Exactly. And Lustig used that to perfection. He'd walk into a luxury hotel, blend in like an ambassador, and within hours he'd have half the businessmen eating out of his hand.
It's that old-school sophistication. The soft voice, the pocket watch, the handshake. People trusted image more than paperwork.
Right. Paperwork can be faked, but confidence, that's harder to question.
So this guy wakes up one morning, looks at the Eiffel Tower and says, "You know what? I think I'll sell that."
Yeah, that's basically how it started. But to understand why it worked, you have to know what Paris was like back then.
Oh, the golden age. Jazz clubs, art, everyone pretending to be sophisticated. But underneath, corruption was everywhere.
Exactly. The city had charm and chaos in equal parts. The government was struggling, the newspapers were full of political scandals, and the Eiffel Tower, believe it or not, wasn't even loved back then.
That's true. A lot of Parisians thought it was ugly, like an iron skeleton stuck in the sky.
So, when Lustig read a newspaper article complaining about how expensive it was to maintain the tower, a light bulb went off in his head.
If people hate it and it costs money, someone might want to buy it.
Exactly. He realized the city's frustration could be turned into opportunity, or, in his case, a scam.
See, that's the thing about smart criminals. They don't invent opportunity, they spot it.
Perfectly said. Lustig saw a real issue, the tower's upkeep, and built a believable lie around it.
And that's the start of the greatest con ever pulled in Paris.
And that's it. The story of a man so persuasive, he convinced people the Eiffel Tower was for sale.
And somehow, nobody thought, wait a second, that's insane.
That's the magic of the con, Mike. People don't question what they want to believe.
Which means we're officially entering one of the smoothest heists in history.
Welcome to the mind of Victor Lustig, the gentleman thief who sold France's pride and walked away smiling.
So let's paint the picture. Paris, mid-1920s. The war's over, the city's buzzing again, and everyone's trying to rebuild their lives.
Yeah, you've got jazz clubs on every corner, writers like Hemingway hanging around cafes, and politicians trying to convince everyone the country's fine, even when it really wasn't.
So basically, post-war optimism mixed with post-war denial.
Exactly. The economy was shaky, inflation was creeping up, and the government was struggling with public trust. That's when con artists thrive. Chaos makes people look for quick opportunities.
And that's what Lustig understood perfectly. He knew that when people are desperate for stability, they'll believe anything that sounds official.
Right. France was trying to modernize, fix its image, make money, move forward. But behind the scenes, corruption was like wallpaper. Everyone knew it was there, but no one talked about it.
That sounds familiar. History doesn't repeat, it just changes the wardrobe.
True. And the Eiffel Tower was this perfect symbol of that contradiction. It was supposed to represent progress, but maintaining it cost a fortune.
Yeah, it was built for the 1889 World's Fair, right? It wasn't even meant to be permanent.
And that's another lesson. Strength should protect, not just dominate. Leadership carries responsibility for those impacted.
And yet, the story is almost absurd. 38 minutes, but it teaches about centuries of governance, strategy, and human behavior.
Absolutely. The brevity makes it memorable. The lessons, timeless.
And as conservatives, it reinforces what we value: preparedness, measured action, accountability, and clear consequences.
And applying that today, whether in politics, business, or personal decisions, the principles remain the same. Think ahead, act decisively, understand your leverage, and always consider the consequences.
And maybe keep some tea ready, just in case.
Can't underestimate that.
But really, it's about perspective and learning from history. Even a short, seemingly obscure event can teach more than years of reading.
Exactly. And it reminds us strength, wisdom, timing, and resilience are interconnected. Neglect one, and the whole system falters.
And subtle humor keeps it digestible while we digest the gravity.
Absolutely. Even history's lessons need a human touch to resonate.
So when people hear the shortest war in history, they laugh at 38 minutes. But if they dig deeper, they find decades of strategy, leadership, and consequence. That's what separates a lucky scammer from a master con artist. Preparation.
And that's what we can learn here. Real preparation gives you power, even if it's misused in his case.
Yeah, the principle's the same. Whether you're building a business or a con, details make the difference.
So there's our setup. A clever man in a city that worships appearances during a time when everyone's chasing prestige.
And the most famous monument in the world just happens to look like a giant pile of expensive metal waiting to be sold.
And that's what Lustig thinks. Why not me?
Of course, if there's a Why Not Me Hall of Fame, he's in it.
So what does he do next? He decides to make it official by pretending to be the government.
Naturally, when in doubt, make a letterhead.
Exactly. And that's how the fake government meeting begins, the step that turns a crazy idea into an actual sale.
And that's where this story goes from clever to legendary.
Next, we'll get into how Lustig created a full government operation out of thin air and convinced the richest businessmen in Paris to bid for the Eiffel Tower.
I can't wait. This is where the hustle becomes art.
All right, Mike, here's where Lustig's genius really starts to show. He doesn't just decide to sell the Eiffel Tower, he plans it like a full-scale operation.
Right, because why half-ass a scam when you can make it official looking?
Exactly. He starts by forging government documents, letters, official stamps, the works, and he picks a luxury hotel in Paris to make it seem, well, legitimate.
Because if you're going to fake being a government official, you might as well have marble floors and chandeliers.
Exactly. He invites a few of the biggest scrap metal dealers in Paris to a secret government auction.
Secret auction? Sounds like an exclusive club. Did they suspect anything?
Not a bit. See, Lustig was careful. He flattered them, told them this was a confidential opportunity, and made sure the whole setup screamed authority.
That's brilliant psychology. People want what they can't have, and they trust someone who looks like they've got power.
Right. He knew that if he could make the deal look official and make the dealers feel like insiders, they'd fall for it.
And that's exactly what happened, right?
Yeah. One of the men he invited, André Poisson, was ambitious, proud, and eager to make a quick profit. Lustig played on all of it.
That's the combo scammers love. Greed plus ego.
And Lustig sold it perfectly. He told Poisson that the government was tired of maintaining the Eiffel Tower and wanted to sell it for scrap. Quietly, of course, to avoid public outrage.
Poisson thought, well, if it's secret, I must be lucky.
Exactly. Lustig made him feel special. That's a classic move. Make the victim think they're the clever one.
So Lustig sets the stage, plays the government card, and hits all the right psychological buttons.
Yeah, and he even had his assistants act like official clerks, taking notes, handing out documents, making it all look real.
He basically turned a hotel room into a mini government office.
Pretty much. By the time the meeting started, Poisson believed he was talking to an official representative of the French government.
And let's not forget, this is pre-internet. No quick fact-checking, no background checks. The illusion was enough.
That's the key. The scam relied on credibility, not brute force. Lustig made every detail match the story he was telling.
So at this point, the trap is set, the mark believed the Eiffel Tower is being sold, and Lustig is about to collect the cash.
Yep, and it's fascinating because he wasn't greedy in the amateur sense. He wasn't running around stealing coins from strangers. He was methodical, precise, and most importantly, convincing.
That's what makes him a legend. A lot of criminals rely on luck. Lustig relied on skill.
Exactly, and it works. Poisson bites, hands over money, and Lustig walks out richer than most people dream of in a lifetime.
And the best part? He does it all with style. No shouting, no chaos, just smooth confidence.
And that's what makes Victor Lustig a case study in manipulation, psychology, and charisma. He wasn't just a con man, he was an operator of perception.
Nodding. And that's why this story sticks. It's not the amount of money. It's the audacity, the planning, the sheer elegance of the scam.
Exactly. And if we think about it, there's a lesson there. Confidence, preparation, and reading human nature can move mountains or sell iron towers.
I'm keeping that one in my notes for life advice. Maybe not for scamming, but you get the point.
Exactly. And next, we'll dive into the moment when Poisson realizes he's been duped and how Lustig manages to do it a second time.
Can't wait. This guy really knew how to work a room. And a city.
All right, Mike, now comes the payoff. Lustig's plan works perfectly. André Poisson hands over the cash, thinking he's buying the Eiffel Tower for scrap.
And Lustig just waltzes out like nothing happened?
Exactly. He leaves the hotel with a suitcase full of banknotes, all meticulously counted. No chaos, no yelling, just smooth execution.
That's insane. I mean, today people get nervous handing over $50 online. This guy's walking out with thousands.
Right. And the brilliance is in the timing. Lustig doesn't linger. He disappears for a while, letting the excitement and pride of Poisson do the rest.
Oh, Poisson was proud?
Yeah, absolutely. That's the psychology Lustig counted on. Poisson didn't want to admit he'd been duped. Pride kept him silent.
So Lustig literally used human ego as part of the scam.
Exactly. And that wasn't unusual for him. Lustig knew that victims rarely report the con if admitting it makes them look foolish.
Smart. And then he leaves Paris?
Yeah, he escapes to Austria for a while, keeping a low profile. He is careful because a little fame could ruin him.
And I guess he's not just hiding, he's already planning round two.
Naturally. Months later, Lustig returns to Paris thinking, well, that worked once, why not again?
Audacity at its finest. Most people would have stayed home after one win.
Not Lustig. He's bold, confident, and knows how to read the room. But this time, the mark is more suspicious.
And that's where the stakes get higher, because now he's repeating the scam. People are starting to notice patterns.
Right, but Lustig still has the edge. Presentation, charisma, and meticulous detail. He even improves his fake documents and letterheads to make the second sale more believable.
And it almost works.
Almost. But this time, the businessman is cautious, asks questions, and eventually alerts the authorities. Lustig realizes the con can't succeed twice on the same mark. It's time to disappear again.
And he does, because disappearing is part of his style. It's not about hiding shame. It's about survival and planning the next move.
Exactly. That's the difference between a reckless criminal and a master con artist. Lustig treats every operation like a chess game.
And every piece is human psychology. Pride, greed, trust. He manipulates it all without force.
Yep, and that's what makes the story timeless. It's not just about money. It's about understanding how people think, how they react, and how small details can sway big decisions.
That's insane. Selling the Eiffel Tower once is one thing, but the planning, the confidence, the follow-up, that's on a whole nother level.
And the most amazing part, he walks away richer and unharmed. No law enforcement caught him immediately because he never left obvious traces.
I can't get over the elegance of it. No chaos, no gunfire, just persuasion.
That's why Victor Lustig is still studied today. The marks weren't stupid. Lustig was simply better prepared, more confident, and more convincing.
It makes you think about how much human nature hasn't changed. People still fall for the same tricks, just with fancier technology now.
Exactly. The psychology is timeless. The tools evolve, but the principles remain the same.
So, what happens next? He goes to America, right?
Yep, and that's where the story gets even wilder. Scams involving counterfeit money, dealing with gangsters like Al Capone, and living like a legend.
Oh, this episode just keeps getting better.
And that's the thing. Lustig wasn't just lucky. He was methodical, intelligent, and ruthless in the smartest way possible. Not violent, just brilliant.
Ruthless with a smile. That's some con artist philosophy right there.
Exactly. And next we'll dive into Lustig's move across the Atlantic and how he continued his reign as one of the greatest scammers in history. All right, Mike. So now we get to the part where Lustig tries selling the Eiffel Tower again.
Yeah, because why stop at once when you've already proven it works?
Exactly. But this time, he's a little bolder, a little more flamboyant. He upgrades his fake government office, hires better-looking assistants, and even makes the documents look more official.
So now it's like a full-scale theatrical production?
Pretty much. He stages everything meticulously, down to the pens on the desk and the stamps on the papers. He knew that every tiny detail added credibility.
And the mark? Same guy as last time?
Not exactly. Lustig targets a new group of businessmen, wealthy, ambitious, and hungry for opportunity. He uses the same psychological tricks: flattery, secrecy, and urgency.
A classic fear of missing out. If you hesitate, someone else will get the deal.
Exactly. And it works. Almost too well. One of the men starts asking questions, gets suspicious, and eventually reports the scheme.
That's when things get dangerous, right?
Right. The police get involved, and Lustig realizes he's being hunted. But here's the genius part. He doesn't panic. He uses charm and quick thinking to evade capture.
Wait, so he's basically playing cat and mouse while still looking like a dignified government official?
Exactly. He knows how to shift perception. If he acts confident and in control, people assume he belongs there. Panic, hesitation, that's what gets people caught.
Man, this is like a spy movie, but the spy is selling iron for cash.
Totally. And he's strategic about his exit. He leaves Paris quietly, changing hotels, traveling under aliases, all to stay one step ahead.
And the amazing part is, he does stay ahead. Authorities never catch him immediately because he's meticulous, calm, and methodical.
Right. He treats every move like a chess game. Every decision is calculated, every action designed to reduce risk while maximizing gain.
That's insane. Most people would freeze at the first hint of danger, but Lustig, he thrives on it.
Exactly. And there's a lesson there. Whether you admire it or not, preparation and confidence can change outcomes dramatically.
And it's all psychological. He never needs to fight physically. He fights perception, reputation, and trust.
That's the essence of his genius. He manipulates social dynamics instead of using force. People comply because they want to, not because they have to.
And the near capture makes it even more impressive. He doesn't just get lucky. He survives because he's smart.
Absolutely. And that's why Lustig's story isn't just about money or theft. It's about mastery of human behavior.
And timing. The guy's like a maestro conducting a symphony of deception.
Perfect analogy. Every note, every pause, every flourish is deliberate. And when it works, when people hand over their money without realizing it, It's pure genius.
Makes you wonder how he even sleeps at night.
Probably better than most of us, because for him, it's control, precision, and understanding the world, not guilt.
And the takeaway here? Confidence, preparation, and understanding human nature can take you farther than force or luck.
Exactly. Lustig's near capture only proves the point. Skill matters more than brute strength.
And audacity. Can't forget audacity.
Definitely. And that's why this story is legendary. Because Lustig didn't just scam, he engineered a system where people's own assumptions and pride worked for him.
And the Eiffel Tower? He walks away unscathed, ready to scam again.
Yep. And next, we'll dive into how he crossed the Atlantic and started a new chapter. More scams, more legends, and even bigger audacity. All right, Mike, after Paris, Lustig decides it's time for a change of scenery. He crosses the Atlantic and lands in America.
Of course he does. Why stay in one country when the world is basically his playground?
Exactly. And the U.S. in the 1920s is the perfect environment for him. The economy's booming, the cities are growing, and people are fascinated by European sophistication.
So he walks in, already polished from Paris, and everyone assumes he's, what, a wealthy European businessman?
Precisely. He's a gentleman of means, impeccably dressed, speaks multiple languages, and knows how to carry himself. First impressions are everything.
And he learned that lesson in Paris. It worked on the Eiffel Tower scam.
Right, and in New York, or wherever he landed, that polish is a superpower. He immediately starts meeting influential people, connecting with businessmen, and finding marks.
Wait, so no break. He just jumps right into scams?
Not really a break. For Lustig, every location is an opportunity. He's always assessing, planning, and observing. He's looking for where people's pride, greed, or trust can be leveraged.
And Americans in the roaring 20s were probably easy targets. Booming economy, everyone wants the next big deal.
Exactly. But Lustig's brilliance is he doesn't just go after money blindly. He studies culture, psychology, and the local systems. He knows how to adapt his scams to each environment.
Nodding. That's the lesson here. Adaptability. He's not repeating Paris verbatim. He's tailoring it to the U.S.
Right. And one of his famous American scams involves counterfeit money, printing and distributing fake bills while staying just outside of legal reach.
So he's diversifying his portfolio. Eiffel Tower sales, then currency scams.
Exactly. And he's careful. Unlike reckless criminals, Lustig studies law, knows limits, and makes sure he doesn't get caught immediately.
That's insane. Most people would overreach and end up in prison quickly. He's almost like a chess master, thinking 5, 10 steps ahead.
Yep. And he even crosses paths with some notable figures of the time. Gangsters, politicians, businessmen, and manages to stay above suspicion.
Walking a tightrope over sharks and not getting eaten.
Perfect analogy. And that's part of the charm of Lustig's story. He's not violent, he's not reckless. He's smart, charming, and calculated.
And the psychology is consistent. Pride, greed, and perception. He knows exactly how to manipulate those forces.
Right. And in America, he pushes those principles even further. Bigger cities, more influential marks, and more opportunities to exploit people's assumptions.
Makes you realize how much human nature hasn't changed. People respond to the same triggers today. Confidence, authority, exclusivity.
Exactly. And Lustig proves that with planning, observation, and timing, you can bend situations to your favor without ever firing a shot.
Makes you realize how much human nature hasn't changed. People respond to the same triggers today. Confidence, authority, exclusivity.
Exactly. And Lustig proves that with planning, observation, and timing, you can bend situations to your favor without ever firing a shot.
And that's why this story is timeless. It's about human behavior, not just crime.
Yep. And even when he eventually faces law enforcement, he survives, again proving it's skill, not luck, that keeps him ahead.
Man, this guy should have been teaching business strategy instead of scamming people.
And true. The audacity, preparation, and timing, all traits of a great strategist, if you look past the morality.
So next we get into the end game, how Lustig eventually gets caught and what we can learn from his genius, audacity, and mistakes.
Exactly, because even legends have limits, and Lustig's story has lessons both in brilliance and consequence. All right, Mike, so by this point, Lustig's not just a one-time genius. He's building what you could call an empire of scams.
Empire, huh? So he's basically running a con business.
Exactly. He's methodical, organized, and always thinking ahead. He treats every mark like a puzzle, and every scam like a project.
That's insane. Most people barely manage their inbox, and this guy is running a cross-continental con operation.
Right. And part of his success is that he adapts to the environment. Paris, New York, Chicago, each city requires different strategies, different people, different timing.
So he studies culture and psychology as much as the actual scam itself.
Exactly. He knows human nature doesn't change, but the context does. And he's careful to observe, learn, and exploit without overstepping boundaries that would get him caught immediately.
And he's always charming, right? Like nobody feels threatened until it's too late.
Yep, charm is his weapon. He relies on people wanting to believe him, wanting to trust the figure in front of them. That's more powerful than any threat or force.
And he's always keeping the appearance of legitimacy. Fancy offices, proper documents, the whole 9 yards.
Right. He understands credibility is everything, and even small details, stamps, letterhead, assistants who act like clerks, reinforce the illusion.
It's crazy. Today we call it branding and reputation management. Back then it was pure psychology.
Exactly. And Lustig also diversifies. He doesn't stick to one type of scam. Eiffel Tower, counterfeit money, bogus investments. He tests different strategies depending on opportunity.
And he's always keeping one step ahead of law enforcement. That's the genius. Most people get greedy and sloppy. He stays disciplined.
Right. He treats every operation like a careful plan. Preparation, observation, execution, exit strategy. And his escapes are as meticulous as his cons.
He's like a criminal version of a military strategist.
Exactly. And that's why historians and psychologists alike find Lustig fascinating. He's a study in human behavior, strategy, and audacity.
And the humor in it all? He could scam the richest men in Paris and America without anyone even raising their voice. That's some next-level mischief.
Right. And it's almost theatrical. Every scam is a performance. Timing, acting, presentation, everything counts.
Makes me think about how much people rely on appearances. One confident person can make a room believe anything.
And Lustig was a master at that. Confidence, preparation, and subtle manipulation. That's how he built his empire.
It's also a lesson in consequences. Charm and strategy can get you far, but eventually luck runs out.
Exactly. And even though he wasn't violent, he was careful. His empire eventually started drawing too much attention, and law enforcement began to catch on.
So even a mastermind has limits.
Yep, but until that point, Lustig's story teaches lessons about psychology, planning, and how small human flaws, pride, greed, trust, can be leveraged by someone observant and bold.
And the audacity, that's timeless. People still try to pull off big wins, but few do it with this level of precision.
Exactly. That's why he's legendary. Not because he was violent or reckless, but because he understood people, timing, and opportunity better than almost anyone else.
And he made it look easy. That's part of the genius.
Yep. The story of Victor Lustig isn't just about the Eiffel Tower. It's about human nature, preparation, and the art of persuasion, lessons that remain relevant today.
And the best part? Every time he pulled a scam, he left a story that's still fascinating over a century later.
Exactly. That's the lasting legacy. Brilliance, audacity, and a lesson in how understanding human behavior can be more powerful than any force. All right, Mike, now we get to the moments that really define Lustig, the close calls. This is where most people would crack, but he thrives.
I love this part. Nothing like near capture to make a story exciting.
Exactly. So in America, Lustig is running multiple schemes: counterfeit money, fake investments, and small scams on businessmen. He's careful, but inevitably, law enforcement starts noticing a pattern.
And that's when the thrill ramps up, right? Because now he's got the feds on his tail.
Right. One famous incident involves him being followed by the police while he's carrying a briefcase full of counterfeit bills. Instead of panicking, he remains calm and even waves at them casually.
Wait, he waved at the cops. That's audacity.
Total audacity. It's psychology at work. If he looks normal and confident, the police hesitate to approach.
That's insane. Most people would run, hide, or at least sweat bullets.
Exactly. But Lustig knew how to blend in. He used disguises, aliases, and sometimes traveled under false documents to stay ahead. He also switched hotels frequently, avoiding any patterns.
So this isn't just luck. He's meticulous. Every step calculated.
Right. He also used misdirection. In one case, he left fake leads for the authorities, making them think he was in one city when he was halfway across the country.
That's like a magician's trick, attention where you don't want it.
Exactly. And the brilliance is that he doesn't just survive these encounters, he turns them into opportunities. Close calls make him more cautious, more observant, and more effective in the next scam.
That's some real-life adapt or die stuff.
And part of why it worked is human nature. Authorities and businessmen underestimated him because he was polite, charming, and calculated. Most people expected criminals to be obvious, desperate, or violent.
And he's none of those things. Just clever and audacious.
Right. And his calmness in tense moments also reinforced his credibility. People assumed someone so composed must be legitimate.
That's brilliant psychology. Confidence is half the con.
Exactly. And over time, he's not just avoiding capture, he's building a reputation, a myth. People talk about the man who sold the Eiffel Tower, and that mystique keeps him one step ahead.
And it's wild to think how close he came to getting caught multiple times. One wrong move, and it's over.
Yep, but Lustig thrives under pressure. His planning, timing, and understanding of human behavior turn near disasters into minor inconveniences.
That's insane. Most people would panic, make mistakes, and get caught. But he's calm like it's just another day at the office.
Exactly. And there's a lesson here. Preparation, observation, and psychological insight often matter more than brute force.
And audacity. Can't forget audacity.
Definitely. And that's why Lustig's story isn't just about crime. It's about human behavior, strategy, and understanding people. Lessons that are still relevant today.
Nodding. And the suspense. Near captures, escapes. It's like a masterclass in risk management.
Yep. And the way he plays the long game, always thinking ahead, is what separates him from ordinary conmen.
And it makes for one hell of a story to tell 100 years later.
Exactly. That combination of audacity, skill, and psychology is what makes Victor Lustig legendary.
All right, Mike. So, we've seen Lustig at the top of his game. Audacious, clever, untouchable. But even legends hit their limits eventually.
Yeah, can't outrun the law forever. What finally did him in?
Well, Lustig's luck ran out thanks to a combination of overconfidence and the FBI, back when they were still getting their footing in organized crime.
Overconfidence, that's classic. The bigger the mark, the bigger the fall.
Exactly. He thought he was untouchable. He kept up his scams even as authorities started tracking patterns, aliases, travel routes, and connections to counterfeit operations.
So he wasn't sloppy per se, just bold to a fault.
Right. He didn't need to take huge risks, but his ego and thrill-seeking kept pushing him forward.
Classic human flaw. Even the smartest guys get greedy.
Exactly. And eventually, the FBI caught up with him. He was arrested in the 1930s for counterfeiting money.
Not the Eiffel Tower, but still a major scam.
Yep. And here's the interesting part. Even facing serious charges, Lustig remained calm, collected, and charming. He didn't panic or lash out. He knew how to navigate tense situations with poise.
That's unreal.
Most people would be losing it in the jail cell.
Right, and he even tried to bribe or manipulate officials subtly, though eventually it didn't work.
So the final capture wasn't dramatic in the explosions and chases way, but it was the result of careful police work catching up with his audacity.
Exactly. And that's the lesson. Even the smartest, most meticulous people have limits. Eventually, consequences catch up.
It's a great reminder. Preparation and skill matter, but no one is untouchable forever.
Yep, and Lustig ended up serving time in prison where, interestingly, he continued to charm and influence people even there.
Of course he did. Can't take the man's personality away.
Right, and historians note that even in confinement, he maintained his composure, showing that his genius wasn't just in scams, it was in understanding human nature, control, and perception.
So the final capture was less about force and more about inevitability catching up with strategy?
Exactly. And there's something almost poetic about it. A man who manipulated perception for decades, finally caught because patterns eventually emerge.
That's a lesson in both life and history. Consistency in behavior leaves traces.
Precisely. And Lustig's story doesn't end with humiliation. It ends as a study in psychology, audacity, and human behavior. People still read about him because he pushed boundaries and exploited systems brilliantly.
And the Eiffel Tower? That's the story that made him immortal. Twice selling it, almost untouchable, and still legendary today.
Yep, the tower symbolizes more than iron. It's audacity, strategy, and the art of persuasion distilled into one story.
And probably a cautionary tale for businessmen everywhere.
Absolutely. Trust your instincts, but don't let charm blind you.
So Lustig's final capture teaches us that brilliance has limits, but strategy and psychology leave lasting lessons.
Yep, and that's why this story is perfect for us. It's not glorifying crime. It's understanding human behavior, planning, and audacity.
And the thrill of near misses and escapes. That's part of the legend.
Exactly. Lustig's life is a masterclass in boldness, foresight, and the human mind, and it's still relevant today. All right, Mike, now that we've gone through Lustig's life, the audacity, the scams, the escapes, and the final capture, let's talk about what we can actually take away from all this.
Yeah, it's easy to get lost in the thrill, but there's more than just, wow, he sold the Eiffel Tower twice.
Exactly. First, human psychology. Lustig understood what drives people: greed, pride, trust, fear, and he leveraged that.
Basically, he played people's weaknesses like a piano.
Right, and that's a lesson beyond crime. Understanding human behavior helps in business, negotiation, leadership, even personal life.
Absolutely, and timing. Every scam relied on perfect timing, knowing when to strike, when to retreat, when to make a move.
Yep, timing is everything. Whether it's making a deal or responding to a threat, success often depends on when you act, not just what you do.
My smiles and planning. Lustig didn't just wing it. Every operation was thought out in detail. Contingencies, exits, backup plans.
Exactly. He treated his schemes like a project manager would treat a major business operation: observation, planning, execution, and exit strategy.
My smiles and charm. Don't underestimate it. He relied on confidence and social intelligence to disarm people before anything else.
Right. And there's a conservative takeaway here, too. Discipline. Lustig wasn't impulsive, he was deliberate. That's the kind of controlled, strategic thinking that gets results.
My smiles, except, in his case, the results were technically illegal.
True. But the principles, preparation, discipline, observation, timing, those are universal.
Another lesson, audacity. You can't succeed if you're too timid. Lustig took calculated risks, and that's what set him apart.
Exactly. Boldness combined with intelligence is far more effective than boldness alone. Most people fail because they take risks without the brains to back it up.
And patience. Even when he was escaping authorities, he wasn't reckless. He waited for the right moment, stayed calm, and executed precisely.
Yep. Patience and strategy go hand in hand. Impulse often leads to disaster.
Another thing, reading people. Lustig was like a human radar for character.
He knew who could be persuaded, who could be intimidated, who would resist.
Right. He wasn't guessing. He was observing and adapting. That's an important lesson. Pay attention, learn, adjust.
And let's be honest, people love stories like this because it's entertaining, but there's a lot to learn if you look past the crime.
Exactly. We're not glorifying his actions. We're studying the principles that made him effective. Strategy, psychology, timing, audacity, discipline, those lessons are timeless.
And the human element. He understood people better than anyone. That's the real secret of his success.
Yep. And here's a subtle one, adaptability. Paris, New York, different scams, different targets. He changed tactics based on circumstances. Flexibility is key.
That's like any successful leader today. You can't rely on the same approach forever.
Exactly. And the story is also a reminder that even brilliance has limits. He was eventually caught. No one is untouchable.
Consequences exist. Even when you're smart and careful, you have to respect the system.
Yep. And finally, impact. Lustig's story endures because he combines strategy, audacity, and psychology into a legend. Stories last when they teach, entertain, and inspire.
So 30 minutes of audacious scams, close calls, and escapes turns into centuries of lessons.
Exactly. And that's why we tell these stories, not just to shock, but to reflect on human nature, strategy, and decision-making.
And maybe, just maybe, to remind people not to sell the Eiffel Tower.
Definitely. That one's still illegal last I checked.
Smiling. Lessons learned. Confidence, discipline, observation, timing, audacity, adaptability, and maybe a little caution.
Perfect summary. And that's why Lustig's story isn't just a crime story. It's a timeless study in human behavior and strategy. All right, Mike, so now that we've gone through the scams, the escapes, the near captures, and the lessons, let's talk about Lustig's legacy.
Legacy of a con man? That sounds unusual.
Yeah, not the type of legacy most people aim for, but it's still fascinating. Victor Lustig left a mark that goes beyond crime in psychology, strategy, and human behavior.
I mean, selling the Eiffel Tower twice is already legendary, but what else did he leave behind?
Well, first, a blueprint of audacity. He showed that careful observation, strategic planning, and understanding people can accomplish things most think are impossible.
Yeah, he treated people like puzzles, patterns, habits, weaknesses. That's the real genius.
Exactly. And that translates into today's world. Negotiation, leadership, even marketing. The principles aren't illegal, it's how he applied them that was.
So, in a way, he's a case study in strategy and influence.
Right. And his story also serves as a cautionary tale. Even the smartest and boldest aren't invincible. Luck and vigilance eventually catch up.
Yeah, no matter how smooth you are, someone's watching.
And his story inspires creativity and problem solving. Every scam required him to think differently, innovate on the fly, adapt to the situation, and anticipate reactions.
That's a lesson you can take into any field. Creative thinking under pressure.
Absolutely, and beyond the practical lessons, Lustig's legacy endures in culture. Movies, books, podcasts, people are fascinated by audacity, cleverness, and that mix of charm with daring.
And the Eiffel Tower angle, that's the hook. Twice selling it? That's irresistible.
Right. It's almost like a symbol, a giant iron monument, impossible to sell, and yet he pulled it off. That's audacity distilled into a story.
And it's also a lesson in storytelling itself. How one event, when told well, becomes legend.
Exactly. Lustig knew how to orchestrate events, but he didn't know he'd become legendary. That part happened because the story outlived him.
Nodded. And there's a conservative takeaway too. Discipline and preparation. He didn't rely solely on luck or charm. He combined them with careful planning.
Yep. That's why even a century later, people study him, not to emulate crime, but to understand mastery in strategy, psychology, and risk management.
And the audacity, that's timeless. People still admire boldness when it's executed smartly.
Exactly. And that's a lesson about life in general. Boldness plus intelligence plus preparation is a formula that works in multiple arenas: business, leadership, negotiation.
And maybe a reminder to be careful about who you trust.
Definitely. And finally, Lustig's legacy reminds us that stories matter. Legends survive because they teach, entertain, and provoke thought. And Lustig did all three.
So, a man who sold the Eiffel Tower twice ends up teaching lessons that go far beyond crime.
Yep. Strategy, psychology, discipline, audacity, and the importance of observation, all wrapped up in a story that still captures imaginations today.
And that's why we're talking about it over an hour later. The man's legacy lives on.
Exactly. And it's not about glorifying the crime, it's about understanding human nature, risk, and the art of execution.
That's pretty profound for a story that starts with, "He sold the Eiffel Tower."
Sometimes the simplest acts reveal the most about people, strategy, and society. Lustig's story proves that.
Audacious, clever, and unforgettable. That's the legacy.
Noted. Perfect summary. And that's why we'll be telling the story for generations. All right, Mike, we've walked through Lustig's life, the scams, the escapes, the lessons, and even his legacy. Let's wrap this up with some final takeaways.
Yeah, let's give people something to actually carry with them besides the, wow, he sold the Eiffel Tower twice shock factor.
First, audacity. Lustig teaches us that boldness, when combined with intelligence, can accomplish things people never imagined. Not illegal acts, just strategic thinking.
Right, boldness plus brains. Not everyone can pull off what he did, but everyone can learn the principle.
Exactly. Second, psychology. Understanding how people think, what motivates them, and how to influence them is key, whether in business, negotiation, or leadership.
And observation. Pay attention to details, patterns, and behavior. That's what kept Lustig ahead of the authorities for so long.
Third, preparation and discipline. Luck only goes so far. Strategy, planning, and contingency thinking are what separates success from failure.
And patience. He waited for the right moment to act, never rushed, always deliberate.
Fourth, adaptability. He changed tactics depending on the situation, target, and opportunity. Flexibility is essential, even outside of crime stories.
And charm. Knowing how to connect with people, gain trust, and inspire confidence is timeless.
Fifth, consequences. No matter how smart or careful you are, choices have limits, and consequences catch up eventually.
Even the Eiffel Tower seller couldn't cheat fate forever.
Exactly. And finally, the power of storytelling. Lustig's story survived because it teaches, entertains, and provokes thought. That's why we're still talking about him today.
So audacity, psychology, observation, discipline, adaptability, and storytelling, lessons that go far beyond crime.
Yep. And that's why episodes like this matter. They're not just entertaining, they give us insight into human behavior, strategy, and decision-making.
And a little cautionary advice. Maybe don't try to sell Parisian landmarks anytime soon.
Definitely. And that's the beauty of stories like Lustig's. They're thrilling, educational, and timeless.
And they remind us that history, even the weird or audacious parts, has lessons we can apply today.
Exactly. And for us, sharing these stories is about keeping that knowledge alive, showing that audacity, strategy, and understanding people are key components of success, whether in history, business, or life.
And it's why we love diving into these stories on Avenue 26.
Yep. From audacious cons to the psychology behind them, there's always something to learn, and maybe even a laugh or two along the way.
Especially when someone literally sold the Eiffel Tower twice.
Exactly. That's the story that proves audacity, intelligence, and human nature make history and legends.
And even decades later, it still sparks curiosity, conversation, and lessons for all of us.
That's the power of a good story. Lessons, insight, and a bit of amazement all rolled into one.
So, for anyone listening, remember, study human behavior, plan carefully, act boldly, and respect the consequences.
Perfect way to end it. That's Victor Lustig. Audacious, clever, and unforgettable. And that's what makes this story a timeless part of history.
And a perfect episode for Avenue 26 listeners.
Absolutely.